So I imagine a kind of science fiction vignette. And we could make it different ways. It could be nothing more than a Facebook post or a Craigslist post. But we could take it farther. We could take it directly into physical reality. So we could imagine that, I don't know, 200 years from now, that we've survived somehow the ecological nightmare that we jumped into 100 years ago and have been busily denying with machines. And we could suppose that we even survived our exposure to high technology, which is twice as dangerous as when we discovered how to make nuclear explosions, but we actually think it's good. And so we could imagine people who are so involved with their electronic devices that really they just follow them from one task to another. And their electronic devices trigger and cue, inform, act as their memory, act as their imagination. In fact, basically, although the people still look human, if you take off their suits, and they all wear suits that mimic things that they'd like to be. Maybe they wear suits that look like animals or dragons or monsters that project holograms, right? So when you're walking around in the street, you can't see who's there at all. You just see, like Samuel Delaney invented in Dahlgren, you see holograms of creatures and science fiction monsters and robots and things. And you can imagine that somehow, strangely, maybe the finger of destiny, fate, or origin is still touching the human world somewhere, even though none of these people have ever had any experience of what an animal is, for example, or even seen anything but pictures of one. Or most of them probably don't even know what a plant is. But anyway, they're all very busy following their machines, and there's a little cube on some route in which there stands an unsuited human person. Fully and completely human, a person who knows the origins of language, why we have Bibles, the mysteries of the sciences that we've turned into machines, who could tell you the most beautiful story ever written improvisationally from his or her mouth, and who in 5 minutes could give you more than anything you can find anywhere in that culture. Because they're still alive inside, and there's a real human heart in there, and it's connected to its origins, and there's a real human intelligence, and it's connected to the history of life on Earth. There's a real person in there, all the way real. And on the outside of the box it says, talk with a real human person. 1 penny. And nobody ever stops there. All the adults ignore it. But every rare once in a while, some child, not fully yet completely enculturated into the overlay, some child that hasn't become the machines in the overlay, tugs on his mother's hand, or possibly his robotic assistant's hand, and says, I want to try to talk to the person, the real human person. And just as adults do when we watch children play on rides or get their fortune told, the robots would analyze the event, add it to the universally shared data bank. So would probably 700 other machines. something would happen in that child. Something available nowhere in their culture. And the reason that it's only a penny is because it's very obvious that no one would be interested even if it were free. Gum wrappers are more interested than human lives. The people that we know and associate with, many of whom we love, will happily attend anything other than a real human person. In fact, if they were to see one, they probably wouldn't be able to recognize it. They wouldn't be capable of recognizing it. They would process it into a label like boy, girl, authority, thief, opportunity, threat, never mind. Cool, not cool, pretty, not cool, gay, not gay, straight, not straight, black, not black, white, not white, like me, not like me. They'd process all those things and beings they see through schemas, and thus the explicit identity of even a gum wrapper or a cigarette butt or anything at all is worth more. An experience of them, any of those things, is worth more than a moment with that talk with a live human person. If you can hear that siren, that happens to be the siren of a catastrophe impending. And where I live at this time, we practice an impending catastrophe. But the hilarious thing is that although we make the signal, nobody has the slightest idea what to do, should there be one. And in fact, most of us would never recognize the onset of such a catastrophe without that signal, but even if we got it, it wouldn't help us much. We are not authors and agents of action. We follow protocols, particularly as it relates to the identity of living beings, and more so with insects, fishes, plants, living places, animals, ecologies, than with anything. We'll dismiss those in preference to picking up a piece of garbage or making one, possibly even becoming one. But the live human person in the box at the side of the road has no value whatsoever. In fact, even were the person to advertise that they could pay, it wouldn't be enough to interest the passersby. Now, you might find in our culture a few passersby who were interested, but if they saw the person in a box, they'd be suspicious. The ironic thing about that is that in our culture, almost all of the truly heartful, human, intelligent people are not in one box or three. They're in a box within 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 a box, even if they're walking around right in front of you. And there is some kind of coin that will bring them forth from that box, but it's not a material coin. It's the coin of human interest, attention, intelligence, concern, wonder, joy, possibility, creativity, play, mutual discovery, nobility, virtue, justice, truth, hope. It's the coin of the origins of our souls and our minds, the original origins of our imperatives as human beings. And in our culture, these are worth less than a photograph of a pretty girl or an exposure to 3 words of text on a little lit box. In our world, the only place for real human beings is in boxes within boxes within boxes. And from within that buried dungeon within dungeons of culture and judgments and ideas and what they're supposed to do and not supposed to do, and words and language and concepts that have nothing to do with the person inside. The soul of our future and history is being torn apart, and we're celebrating it. And it looks like little boxes in our hands full of light that we follow around and analyze each other and ourselves with. Boxes that can interrupt anything. Sex, communication, authenticity, humanity, nature, the history of life on Earth. These little boxes can interrupt that. And it's funny, it's like a war of boxes, isn't it? And neither side has any chance in such a war. But every time we encounter any living being, and what I've said of humans is 100-fold more so, more true of every other living creature. If we can't see that we've put each other in boxes, within boxes, within boxes, and demanded that this become the truth, honesty, science, religion, knowledge, democracy, work, community. If we've done that with each other, right? Our own faces, yeah? How much more have we invisibly and horribly done this with nature? But there is a kind of interesting irony here. If you could put a bird in a place where humans could communicate with it, so that they could touch the mind of the bird, and know that the bird was a wild bird and not something made by humans. So this bird would come from the living world into a perch each day, and the humans could talk with it. And they knew that it could speak for the birds and for nature. There are many people who would pay nearly any price for that. That can't be bought with prices. Like relation with a true human mind or intelligence, it only happens outside the boxes. And the interesting thing is that from outside the boxes, you can look down into them and see the structure of the trap. But from anywhere inside them, you can't look up and see the box you're in, the box outside it, the box that generated that. And this is one of the aspects of what we sense and feel as wisdom. What a metaphor or a joke does is it lifts us out of the box we're in to a box just one or two orders outside it, and lets us see down through them for a moment, and we feel a sense of elation or sudden enlightenment. But every person that we see, every moment of communication, every electronic message even that we send, has the opportunity to take the boxes off. We don't have to have a bad attitude about the boxes. We don't have to have any attitude at all. We don't have to be activists or, zealots. We can just be human. And anytime we're willing to do that, we step out of the overlays, the layers and layers and layers of overlays that have replaced our minds, our humanity, are wiping out our ecologies, destroying the possibility of human intelligence, replacing it with systems which cannot be intelligent, cannot ever become minds, and certainly will never approach hearts, whether we mean them metaphorically or physically. So it's interesting that the chance to talk with a live human person, true and real, through and through, or the chance to become one, is in our culture so profoundly either unimaginable or estranged from our experience that any other thing is more valuable. War, harming each other, lying, scamming, complaining, pretending to excellence or intelligence or beauty, anything at all. Crushing an insect. But we are the one in the box, and we are the one in front of it. And many of us are holding it in our hands. I am recording into one right now. And so what I hope that we will discover today is both the schema of this trap and how even the trap itself contains an exit that we built into it. When we look down from outside the things we make, we can see the structures we ourselves have imposed. But when we fall down into them, looking back up or outward, all we see is the reflection of what we've built and nothing else. And that means we are deprived of every human and intelligent sense of value or truth. We've lost the compass of our minds. It just points randomly to things that the derivatives we've imposed say are important in words. Right? And then, of course, trapped away from our humanity and each other, from origin, nature, and intelligence, we will accept every kind of replacement and pay ever higher prices to, quote, enjoy them or be entertained, which really just means to be lifted just for a brief instant somewhere near a feeling of what it's like to be truly human, truly intelligent, to have personal agency in a meaningful collective, oriented for purposes that fulfill the imperatives of our hearts and our human birth, the imperatives of the history and future of life on earth. Talk to a live human girl. Talk to a live human boy. And before you start, become one. Let's remember how to do this together, because buried in boxes, we're just going to follow them. And then we'll become them, and we won't even be able to remember. We're already there. Unfortunately, the science fiction story happened 100 years ago. We just haven't noticed yet. Drop a penny in the fountain. Let's remember where we come from and what it means to be human, alive, intelligent, with and for each other in the history and future of life on earth.